Hello, Olga here. In today's tutorial, I'm going to use one die and stamp set to create two different size, different shape projects. One of them is going to be a clock tower lantern, and the other one is a mini card that is shaped like pocket watch. They both are really simple to make, so let's start with the bigger project, which is the lantern. To create the shape of the lantern, I'm going to use this large die. It's from Room Divider die set by Paper Discovery, and I'm going to pair it with another Paper Discovery die, which is that clockwork panel. Now I'm going to send both dies through the die cutting machine. Since it is such an intricate die, I also used a metal shim to increase the pressure in the machine, and I got the perfect result from just one pass. It die cut just fine. To create a lantern shape, I'm going to need 4 shapes like this one, but for the 3 remaining ones, I'm going to use the other panel, which is the plain one. This one has no arch, but I'm going to use the same clockwork insert. Here I have all 4 panels die cut, and since the pressure in the machine was so strong, they might be a little bit warped, but I have a little hack for that. I am simply using a household iron, and I'm ironing them like linens. You just have to make sure you turn off the steam. Once I've done that, all my panels look nice and flat, and I'm ready to start assembling the lantern. The first thing I'm gonna do is folding down all the vertical tabs. The scored line is actually created by the die, so it's quite easy to do. Next, I'm going to back up each panel with a piece of vellum, and I'm using the printed vellum by Paper Discovery. This one is beautiful lilac color. It's always a good idea to add vellum to lanterns and backlit cards since it disperses light beautifully. So I have trimmed down 4 pieces of vellum to the size of the panel, and then I'm sticking them down at the wrong side of each panel with the liquid glue. The vellum is not as absorbent as the regular cardstock, so the glue takes a little bit longer to dry, so that's a good idea to use a large acrylic block or anything heavy to press down the die cut until the glue dries. So this is how the back top panels look like, and now I'm going to stick them all together. So I'm applying the glue to the vertical tabs and I'm sticking down the next panel. I'm using the grid on the mat just to make sure I keep them straight. Now I am applying the glue onto the last tab and I'm sticking it down onto the first panel, and this way I have my lantern shape. And now let's go ahead and turn this lantern into a clock tower. For the clock, I'm going to use a die and stamp set called Time on Your Hands. With these dies you can create a really large clock that is 10 inches tall, but for this project I'm only going to use the stamps plus a matching circle die. I'm going to do some heat embossing on a piece of printed vellum, the same color that I used for the background of the panels. I am masking off the sentiment in the center of the clock face, then I'm stamping it with the Versamark ink and applying some silver embossing powder. And by the way, if you are interested in this die and stamp set, there are only few last items left in stock. I will put a link to the online store down below in the description box, and of course I will link up all the other products. I've die cut a circle out of white cardstock to back up my clock face later on. You can also use this circle to die cut the clock face itself, but this time I'm just going to use the scissors because I don't want any border around the heat embossed outline. Then I'm going to use the liquid glue and stick down the vellum clock face onto the white background. Those printed vellums are adhesive friendly and you won't see any glue through it. I'm also going to attach the clock arms that are the part of the die set. I've die cut them out of silver cardstock and I'm sticking them down with the liquid glue again. I'm also going to add a small half pearl in the center. Then I'm sticking down the clock face onto the lantern section that has the arch. I'm using the hot glue here, but any adhesive will work. Now I'm just going to embellish the clock, so I'm going to add some paper flowers as well as some tiny leaves, flourishes, and probably a bow as well. This leaf and flourish die set is really one of my favorites. It's great to add to so many different projects. It works as an embellishment, as a space filler, and it also adds some movement to static compositions like this one. So I have attached some silver flourishes and then I'm also sticking down the flowers. The hot glue gun is my favorite adhesive for sticking down the dimensional elements. I have also decided to add a small bow and I'm using a leftover piece of ribbon from my stash. Then I'm also gonna add a few leaves that I've die cut out of white cardstock. I'm sticking them down around the flowers using the hot glue gun. And now my clock tower lantern is completely finished. You can also fold it down and send it in an envelope just like a card. And of course you can place a tea light inside and it just lights up. And now let's move on to other really fun project that is also kind of interactive. It's going to be a small card that looks just like the pocket watch. I'm going to use the circle dice from Time on Your Hands die set, and I'm going to die cut 2 circles out of silver iridescent cardstock. Then also the 2 open circle frames. We'll also need 2 circles out of plain cardstock. Plus we're going to need some add-ons like a chain ring, clock arms, a hinge and some gears. Before I start putting all these bits and pieces together, I'm also going to add some embossing. There is an embossing folder that coordinates perfectly with Time on Your Hands die set. I'm placing one of silver circles inside the folder in the center, and then I'm going to send it through the machine. So this is how the embossed circle looks like, and this one is going to be the front of my card and also the outside of the pocket watch. Next, I'm going to emboss both open circle frames using the same embossing folder. You might want to tape down the die cuts inside the folder just to ensure they stay in place, although this is not really necessary. And this is how pretty this little decorated frame is. It really looks like metal now. And now let's work on the inside of the card. The 2 circles out of white cardstock are meant for the inside, and I'm going to start by stamping a clock face onto one of them. I'm just using the black ink here. I used a stamping tool to position the clock exactly in the center, but you might choose to stamp it first on a piece of cardstock and then die cut it. I'm also going to use another stamp set for the inside of my card, and this one is by Team Holtz. It's called Composition and Lined. It's a super useful die set. One side of it, which is the lines, is great for stamping on inside of your cards. And in this case, I'm going to stamp the lines on the remaining circle to add my message later on. The purpose of the other stamp is just adding more interest to your backgrounds, whatever project it is. So now I'm applying some tumbled glass distress ink onto that stamp, and I'm going to stamp this pattern on both the clock face and the lined piece. This stamp is great for tone-on-tone stamping, and it just adds that vintage effect. So now let's go ahead and put all those pieces together. I'm starting by sticking down the open frames onto the stamped circles. Then I'm going to put the hinge together. That little rectangle is actually the hinge. It has a scored line that you have to use to fold it in half. I'm also going to add that chain ring as an embellishment. I've die cut it twice, and now I'm applying the glue onto the top part only, the ring part, and I'm sticking down the two pieces together, and then I'm attaching them on top of the hinge. Now I'm applying the glue on both sides of the hinge, and I'm sticking down the two embossed circles on top of it. The hinge should be on the inside. And this way we have created the watch shape. We just have to decorate it on the inside now. Now I am applying some adhesive onto the lined circle, and I'm going to stick it down on the inside of the card, and this way the hinge is going to be completely hidden. I'm going to attach the clock face circle exactly the same way on the other side. And by the way, you might want to attach real photos instead of the clock face, and this way you can create a locket instead of the pocket watch. And now it's time to add some decorations and finishing touches. So just like in the previous projects, I'm going to attach the clock arms onto the clock face. I'm also sticking down a few gears onto the lined circle just to add more interest and keep on with this clock theme. If you have some traces of glue on that metallic foiled surface, you can remove them with a baby wipe. I'm also going to use the liquid glue and attach that chain die cut to my watch. That one really adds a lot of movement to the project. And finally, I'm also going to add some gems to the outside of the watch, and I'm going to use a lot of them. I'm using some liquid glue to add the drops of glue onto the embossed pattern, and then I'm using a pickup tool to position all the gems of different sizes onto that dots of glue. And I'm only going to add the gems to one side of the watch, which is the top side. And that finishes the second project for today. This one is really fun, and it has that wow factor because it's definitely not something that the recipient is expecting to get. You can also use a chain ring at the top to hang this mini card onto the gift bag, just like the tag, but with a personal message and probably even with a photo inside. I nearly forgot to mention that both these projects were published in Papercraft Essentials magazine, which I'm also going to link up down below in the description as well as on my blog. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time.